growing up, my childhood was fine. Looking back, it seemed normal. There was a lot of tension often in the house, but to me that was the norm. And I don't think I thought about it one way or the other. It just was. And one fine day, it was when I was in 7th grade, at the end of December, my mother sat me down and she said, "We're going to be going to New York. We're getting separated." And sure enough, my grandfather flew in the next day from Brooklyn, picked us all up, and we got on a plane that night. It was New Year's Eve. And in the blink of an eye, I went from Los Angeles with a class of 7 girls to a school in Brooklyn with a grade of 7D girls. And so from one day to the next, just complete and total differentness. The differentness was more about my new environment and my new school than it was about the separation. Because I think in that sense I was probably a little relieved, because there was always a lot of tension, and it was always a feeling of like nervousness at home, like when is the next explosion going to happen? So it was a sense of relief not to have to deal with that anymore. In the 1980s, divorce was taboo. It was absolutely not a topic of discussion ever. It was looked at as a rare and terrible thing. And that message came across very strongly. And therefore, there was never a time that I actually wanted to talk about it, because there wasn't any precedent or any example to follow or to relate to in terms of speaking. There was one time, it was actually right before I left Los Angeles, where that day between my mother telling me and my grandfather coming to get us, I was in school and I obviously could not concentrate, and I was a top student. And there was a teacher who noticed, and she actually called me over, and she actually reached out and she said, "I see something is bothering you. Do you want to talk about it?" And I just said, "My parents are getting separated," and I collapsed on the desk, and I broke down and started crying. She had no idea what to do. I don't know what she said. She mumbled something. I'm trying to remember if she even put her hand on my shoulder. Could be she did. I don't remember. It was very uncomfortable. As a matter of fact, it was a very short conversation. She had nothing to say to me, nothing. And like I said, it ended very quickly. She left the room and I went back to class, or whatever it was. It was not a positive experience. And so after that, in addition to my own family members giving over that message of, "We don't talk about this," the one adult I said it to, it didn't help. Not only didn't it help, it didn't make me feel, all these years later, I still remember that uncomfortableness of, why did I just say that? Like, it just served no purpose in my life to have said that to her. And therefore, when I got to New York, not only wasn't there anyone available to talk to, but it wasn't done. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't like, I wish I could, or if only I could say something. It wasn't the way things were done in my world at that time. And so it wasn't as if I wanted to and I didn't. It was just not an option. One of the things about my childhood that really made a huge impact and made a big difference to me was going to camp every summer. I loved camp. Camp was a place where I could feel normal. When I was 18, I actually became very, very, very close to another girl in camp. She was from Los Angeles, and therefore she knew my story. I didn't have to say a word because she knew. We were up most nights till 3-4 a.m. and it was amazing. That summer I started talking, and once I did, I saw how much better I felt. That's what broke that taboo silence and showed me how valuable it is to speak to somebody, how important it is. I learned that A, it's okay to talk. B, it's important to talk. And C, you're gonna feel better if you do. Eventually, when I started talking a little bit, and I would say my parents are divorced or separated, and someone would say, "Wow, you don't look like it." I'm like, what does that mean? What am I supposed to look like? And the concept the feeling that I got from the adults around me as you are a Neba case ultimately pushed me to prove I'm not. And that is probably what made me in a lot of ways who I am today, because I was so determined to show the world that you can come from divorced parents and still be a good person, a normal person, a capable person, a go-getter kind of person. I used it as a way to motivate myself to do more. I probably worked harder at certain things than other people because I needed to prove things more than other people. Years later, when my first child was born, he was born with severe special needs. And I remember laying in the hospital and my grandmother, who I love dearly, called me and she said, we don't have to talk about this because that is the society she grew up in. And I remembered divorce and I remembered being silent. And I said, no. I said, if we're quiet about this, it'll be something we're embarrassed about, and I will never be embarrassed about my child. So no, we're not being quiet about this. That was because I had dealt with divorce as a child. And that's what gave me the strength I needed when I needed to really deal with something challenging in life, like a special needs child. And I realized then how nothing happens for nothing, and I was able to deal with my son when I really needed to because of what I had been through all the years leading up to it. If there was a message I could end with, I would want to say that if you are a person who is going through divorce, your parents are divorced or separated, it's important to know that yes, you do have to cut yourself some slack. You are going through more than the average person. But it's also important to know that you do have to do what is expected of you, and don't fall into the trap of using this as an excuse not to be the best person that you can be. One more message I would want to give over is please find someone to talk to. It can be a mentor, it could be a therapist, it could be a good friend. Somebody who's going to listen to you. It's important to speak. You can have a great life. You can get married and have a wonderful, beautiful family. You can be an amazing person. You are an amazing person. You just have to be the best you that you can be, regardless of where you come from. It can be done.